You know, that boat is like awesome. I really like that boat. And this is just ugly. And didn't I just see you clean? Why are you clean if we're doing hand sanding?
Oh, good question. You know, even though we're going to sand this, a lot of times before you sand it, if you do a baggie test, you're going to find the paint's contaminated. So yes, sanding would remove the contamination.
So that way it doesn't clog your sandpaper?
Yeah, you don't waste your sandpaper. So I just took a clay towel to everything real quick.
All right. So really quick, this is the first time I've seen you since you went to Chi-Town. Did you have deep dish pizza while you were there?
Oh my gosh, I thought I was going to die. Chris Ricana took us to some Chicago pizza place. And he told everybody 2 pieces and you're done. 3, you're gonna die. And I'd say he's very accurate on that.
So how many did you have?
I had 2. I was done. And
Caveman full.
It was the caveman pizza, and it had chunks of sausage and pepperoni that were just big enough to, one bite is a full mouth, you know.
All right, awesome. So it was a good class.
Good class.
Learned a lot.
Yeah, good class. You know, we sanded down 3 cars in 2 days, buffed them out, no burn throughs, and coated them.
Yes.
So
all right.
Cool
so that's a nice segue. I see what you did there. We're coming back to sanding today. And everybody has these. So Mike's going to teach you how to use those. But before we do that, let me just do my little spiel like I always do. Thank you for tuning in. Get your comments and your questions into the comment section. We'll get to those towards the end of the video. And I'm going to go that way. Then you're going to do some explaining.
Sure.
So I'm going to go over here. You go where you go. I go where I go.
So what we're going to do today is we're going to show hand wet sanding to remove orange peel, surface texture, and then this car actually has fish eyes and DIP, which stands for dirt in paint. And a lot of times, you know, if you got a shoddy paint booth or a contaminated shop, after the car is painted, if there's any kind of dirt or dust floating around there and it lands on the car, of course it sticks, and you see a little tiny clump in the paint, and that's called DIP. This car is actually here for our upcoming class in May. So I have 4 cars here for sanding. I got a 1941 Graham Hollywood street rod. I got a 1987 Chevy Silverado square body. I have a 1931 Model A that is in the paint booth today, and we have this Corvette, and this Corvette has a custom paint job, but it is horrible. And I bring that up because one of the first things I want to talk about is you should not be sanding factory paint. Yes, I know it can be done. Yes, I've done it myself. But the thing you got to remember about sanding factory paint is in most cases, the factory paint on a modern car is thinner than a Post-it note. So it's thinner than 3 mils, oftentimes thinner than 2 mils. So even if you're so talented that you're able to sand down the factory paint and buff it out without ever burning through, you have just left that clear coat just whisper thin, and now it may suffer premature clear coat failure. So it's just not a good idea. It can be done, sure it can be done, but probably not a good idea. But this makes for a great training car because A, it's black, you know, so the students are going to be able to see their sanding marks if they got them out or if they missed them, and of course they're going to be able to see if they truly got a swirl-free and a hologram-free finish by the time we're done sanding it, cutting it, buffing it, and then ceramic coating it. So great demonstration car. And also for that reason, I'm just going to work a section out in here because I want to save the mass of the car for the class, you know. Anyway, so that's what's going on with this car. A 1981 Corvette 4-speed car, really nice muscle car, but kind of a shoddy paint job. But that's okay. Gives us something to perfect. Now, this is something a lot of people have been interested in. This is, Harbor Freight has actually introduced sanding sheets or sanding papers and sanding discs. So this week, we're going to go over the Harbor Freight sanding sheets. These come in 9x11. I think they start at like 180 grit and go up to like 3,000 or 4,000 grit.
180?
So there's a wide variety of grits, you know, for doing prep work, but also for the finishing side. And they actually, I was kind of looking at this, they actually have a really nice graph back here that kind of shows what the different grits are. And you finally get over here to the 1500 and 2000, and it says finishing and defect removal. So they have their own sanding papers, and on the box it says it's good for wet or dry. And usually most wet papers can be used for dry, but the thing about it is some papers, some discs offer anti-clogging characteristics to help them from getting loaded up with paint as you're sanding dry. With wet, as I'm going to show you, you know, you've got a lubricant in there that helps the paper from getting clogged up. Now, they also have their own sanding block. And I just wanted to share this and talk about this. This is a copy of the 3M. The 3M is a rubber block. And normally the way you do this is you take your full sheet of sandpaper, 9x11, and then you're going to cut out, you can actually get 4 strips out of it. So I cut 3 here. I still got 1 that's already on the paper. And I never liked the 3M blocks because the bottom is never flat. So if the whole idea is to flatten out the paint, you need something that you're sanding with that's absolutely flat. And the 3M, they were never flat. They're warbled. They're got little imperfections in them. This one is actually pretty flat. But when I went to use this, I'm just going to show you. Normally what you do with one of these blocks is you pull up on one of the ends, and there's these little 3 steel teeth in there. Then you pull your paper around, attach it, push it down. It clamps that paper into place. You pull to the back side, stick it in there, clamp it down, and now it's secured in place and you're ready to start sanding. So what I did is what I did normally with the 3M is I pulled this thing back and it broke. So I would describe this material as rubber-like. So rubber-like. It's like rubber, but it's not rubber. So if Harbor Freight's watching this, you know, you got a good first start. It's not a bad block, but you need to make this actually more flexible, because the hardest thing about putting these discs on is pulling this thing back all with 2 hands and getting this thing put together. So that's one option. But it's nice that they have a complete system. So you can go to Harbor Freight, get your sanding papers, get a sanding block, and you're ready to start sanding. Now, I went and borrowed this. Usually I recommend and use the Maguires. The part number is E7200. It's a flexible, rigid, flexible backing pad, and is by far my favorite. But all of mine, I got a dozen of these for my classes. All of mine are in a box coming from Chicago back here because we use them on the AC Cobra. So I borrowed this from my good friend Robert D. Trolisi, and this is actually a Durablock, and they make all kinds of different blocks, different shapes, different sizes for sanding application. But anyway, this one here is just your basic. It's actually fairly rigid, which is good because the harder the block is, the smoother the surface. When you're sanding, it keeps all the sanding action on the very high points, which is what you're trying to remove, the high points. And then you sand until you get it completely flattened out or leveled, and then you stop and move on to a new area. So you want a rigid block that's about this size. And then the way you use this is you take your 9.5x11 paper, and what you're going to do is you're going to fold this thing in half. Let's just do this live here. And then either, crease it a couple times and tear it, or I've actually got a pair of scissors that I prefer to use. And one thing, a little tip I want to share here, I don't know if you can zoom in on this, but I got a bunch of these scissors around here, but this one actually says sandpaper. Okay, and the reason I do this is because when you cut sanding discs, because I oftentimes make my own 3-inch, 2-inch, and 1-inch sanding disc, or you cut sanding paper, you're cutting something with abrasives and it dulls your scissors down. So I write sanding paper on this one and I reserve it only for sandpaper, and it keeps my other scissors for cutting paper sharp. So that's how that works. Let me fold this again. And then what you want to do, and I've already done this, is I've got a bucket of water here, and you want to take and put a few drops of dishwashing soap, or in this case I use the Dr. Beasley ceramic body washes, a little bit of lubricant, and then I got a spray bottle, same thing. You can see the bubbles are in there. This is a little bit of soap in there. And you want to take and put a little soap in there, and here's the reason why. The soap does 2 things. It lubricates the surface to make the sanding action smoother, and then it also helps to keep the sanding paper, or if you're machine sanding, the sanding disc from loading up with the removed material, the paint you're taking off. And sanding, because this sandpaper is very grippy. This is 2000 grit. It's going to want to grip the paint. So having a little bit of lubrication there helps you with inertia to keep your hand movement going to sand the paint in a smooth pattern, so you have an even sanding mark pattern. Now, once you've got your 9x11 cut, then the next thing you want to do is there's 2 ways. There's 2 ways to put this on the block, and everybody has their own preference. I was just with my good friend Rod Kraft. Rod likes to fold. I'm a wrapper. But if you want to fold, that would look like this. You would take your sanding paper, your half sleeve or half sheet, and you would fold it in half. Then you'd basically just take and wrap this around your block like that. And then everybody's got to kind of figure out how to hold it. I take my thumb and my finger, put it on the side of the block. That gives me 3 fingers to kind of push down on the face of the block. So when I'm sanding, I can distribute the pressure of my hand equally. Okay, and then that's folding. Then I like to wrap. So wrapping is when you just actually take the paper and you wrap it around. And basically when you're using a sanding block up this like this, so that's wrap. But basically you're going to get to use basically 2 sides of a half sheet, you know. You can cut them up and use them for smaller sanding blocks and things like that, but that's how you use it. Then normally you want to take and soak these for about 30 minutes in some water before you use them. Now, I didn't soak these. This is going to be a fairly quick demonstration, but you do want to soak them. You want to be careful you don't soak them too long because some of the cheaper papers will actually fall apart in the water. Okay, so there we go, soaked. Now I got my soapy water, and we're going to come over here. And Yancey, if you want to maybe come in and see if you can show me where you can pick up the lettering behind me to show before and after.
Okay, let me grab this.
And I have already taken and clayed this. You know, years ago I wrote this article. It's got a really long title, but it goes like this. The most common place to get overspray paint is a body shop. And the reason why is because say your Corvette goes in, it's in the paint booth, it's getting a paint job, it comes out, and you're thinking, well, there's no chance to get overspray now. It's out of the paint booth. But that's not true. You got, you know, people in the body shop, workshop there, spraying things called guide coats, or maybe putting some primer on a part before it goes into the paint booth. And all that stuff floats around and lands on your freshly painted car, on the glass, on the wheels, on the paint, everything. So the most common place to get overspray paint is at a body shop. Even though you think it'd be a kind of a safe place, it's not like that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just sand an area right down here. Did you capture any orange peel you wanted to capture?
Let me...
We were talking earlier about getting the lettering or something.
Yeah, I got the lettering.
Because this thing, I already did a little test section here to make the promo video for this, and it's a huge difference. And you know, one of the things I like to point out in all the detailing classes we teach, look, our 3-day classes, the first day is all paint correction, the second day is all sanding, the third day is all boat detailing. And in 1 day of sanding, you're not going to become an expert. What I do is I give you a great foundation to build on. So you can go out into the garage and sand something down. You know what tools you need, you know what products, you know the process, the order of steps to do. So you can go out and do it without messing up. But nobody becomes an expert in a day. But they are very hands-on and fun classes. Okay, so I'm going to put down some soapy water right here. I'm going to get rid of this. And then I'm going to cover a couple of basic techniques now. Whenever you're sanding with a block like this, you don't actually want to stand perpendicular because you'll put ruts in where the edges are. So you want to turn it, or the word is cant. You want to cant it or tilt it a little bit and then sand like that. And when you're starting out, you can go slow, but I'm going to tell you, there's something to be said for inertia. Getting your hand moving helps you to keep it moving, because again, this paper is going to want to grab and stop on you, so you want to get your hand moving. And as far as the work size, I always teach people, especially when you're starting out, you want to tackle small sections at a time, about the size of a microfiber towel, something that you can manage with equal pressure over your hand. You know, when I'm standing right here, it's easy for me to push down. The further my arm leaves my body, I got to focus more on keeping the same pressure throughout my entire arm. And it's a little more difficult, a little more tiring. Okay, so here we go. And then as you're moving this sandpaper over the surface, you want to do what's called make a tight pattern. And what that means is you want to move the sandpaper over just a little bit, like 1/8 or 3/8 of an inch at a time. So you're going like this, real tight as you move across the panel. You don't want to make M's or W's, you know, this huge pattern. It's going to leave a horrible looking sanding mark pattern, and you're not really leveling the paint in the best way possible. So then if you look down here, you can actually see where the water is turning white. So this is called your slurry. And this, whenever you abrade something clear, it turns opaque. So that's why you see this is white. Now, in the old days, they called this color sanding, but that's before base coat, clear coat technology was introduced. So when you'd sand on the paint, you were actually sanding on pigmented paint, so the slurry would be the color of the paint. Blue paint, you'd have a blue slurry, so they called that color sanding. But it's the same kind of thing. We're sanding with some paper to level and flatten down the orange peel. And then another thing I like to do is there's a raised body line right here, and I can feel that with my thumb. So I know as I get closer, I want to kind of stay away. In my classes, I teach what I call the rule of thumb. Some guys like it, some guys don't. But what that means is wherever you've got a raised body line, like the top of this fender or an edge where the hood meets the fender, I stay about a thumbnail distance away. And the reason why is because you don't want to sand right on the edges, because it's going to be really hard to bring a spinning wheel pad down and buff the sanding marks out and not burn through the edge. Now, there is a way to skin that cat, and that's by using a tool like the Rupes Nano with the 1-inch pad, or the Flex Pixie with a 1-inch pad, both of these in rotary mode. And basically you're just taking a very small rotary and you're going along all the edges that you sanded and pulling out your sand marks very safely instead of a big 8-inch pad spinning on a big rotary. The problem with that is, and most of you experienced guys will understand this, the problem with it is think how long that would take you to take a little 1-inch pad around every raised body line and edge on this car. So what I teach is big picture. Guys like Jason Kilmer, they get the big bucks for doing show car sanding. They can spend a month on a car. But in the real world, you know, if you're talented enough that someone's going to bring you a car like this and say, hey, would you sand it down? The normal price range for something like this is around $3,000. That's enough money to cover for your sanding tools and make a pretty good profit. But you're not going to make any money if you spend 2 weeks on the car pulling sanding marks out by the edge. So what I do is I lower my customers' expectations by telling them about the rule of thumb, explain I don't want to burn through all their edges. They appreciate that, and the car's still going to look great. So it's called the rule of thumb. You could type that into Google and probably pull up my article on that. And of course, that does mean that if you stand back and look real closely, you'll see no orange peel, and then you start to get to the edges, a little bit of orange peel kicks back in. But it doesn't really distract from the beauty of the car, and it's back to making a profit, not working on some other dude's street rod for free. Okay, did you want to come and get a picture of this where I flattened it all out?
I got it right here.
Oh, okay. So I flattened this out, and you can kind of see where there's DIP. Okay, so there's a little piece of dirt right here that I didn't completely sand flat on purpose. Then there's a little crater, so that's a fisheye. And then you can also see the hills and valleys where I didn't sand it enough, again, on purpose, just because I want to do a small spot here. So that's basically how you do it. Now, one of the things, I love Jason Rose, he's got this saying that goes like this: top coat hardness is an unknown factor. God, I love that statement. And he's absolutely correct. I don't know if this paint is hard or soft. Well, I do, because I already did a test spot. But a lot of times when you're buffing out a car, you don't know if it's hard or soft until you go to buff it. And also to sand it. And the harder the paint is, the harder it's going to abrade. And I thought this paint's kind of in that medium range, right where you wanted it. It sanded easy, it buffed easy. Okay. Anyway, so the next thing you want to do is you would actually sand down this entire car. If it were me, of course, I would start on the roof, work my way down. When it comes to large panels, I start in the middle and work my way out. I don't start here and work my way in. You just need to have a method for the madness. So every time you go in the garage, you're going, how should I do it this time? It shouldn't be different. You should have a method to your madness. But on these large panels, you want to start in the center, work your way out. And I would sand this whole thing down with my first grit, and then I would either follow that with a second or a follow-up step with a less aggressive sandpaper. The purpose of this would be to refine the sanding marks to make the buffing easier. It's always better to spend more time sanding so you spend less time buffing. Plus the buffing generates heat. Sanding's very cool. But in this case, 2000 as far as I'm going to go with this. The class is actually going to learn dry sanding on this car. And when they do the dry sanding, we're going to start out with 1500 by Eagle abrasives, and then we're going to go to 2500 all hand sanding dry, and then we'll start buffing it out. So it's kind of a similar process here. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to take and pull out my sanding marks. Just got done teaching a class in Chicago, and of course one of the topics was sanding and buffing, and then how do you use a wool pad on a rotary. And I get asked this all the time, well, Mike, can't you use an orbital? Sure, if an orbital will take scratches out of paint, it'll take sanding marks out. The difference is the speed and the effectiveness. It's going to be faster to use a fiber, a wool pad on a rotary, not so much for the big flat areas, but everywhere you got to get up on edge to get into tight areas, thin panels around raised body lines and edges. Free spinning tools are just going to tend to stall out when you're trying to do that work, so it's going to add more time to the process overall. And you should never sand clear coat with a gear-driven tool, like the Rupes Millet, the Flex Beast, the Harbor Freight Forced Rotation Orbital Polisher. They work great for boats where the gel coat's thicker, but on car paint, actually what it does is it takes too much paint off too fast. It does scalloping. I got an article on that somewhere too, scalloping. So you don't want to use a gear-driven orbital for sanding, but any free spinning sanding polisher will work. And by the way, next week, This car is going to be here all the way to May. Next week, I'm going to show how to use the Harbor Freight Bower. They call this a 6-inch DA, but that's because it has a 6-inch backing plate, which doesn't even make any sense. It's an 8mm free-spinning random orbital polisher because the stroke is 8mm. So that's what they should call it, an 8mm. But for some reason, everybody out there in the world always names their tool after the backing plate size. But I'm going to show how to use that with the Harbor Freight sanding discs. And they just introduced foam backed and sanding films and their own interface pad. So next week we'll probably flip the car and I'll show you how to use the machine sanding system on the other side of the hood here. Okay, so pulling sanding works out. So I put a strip of product down there, and I always teach guys, you want to get a good foot stance, brace yourself, and in the beginning you're usually going to, for the parts that are way out in the middle, you're going to be leaning on the car. So that's why you never want to buff the sides out first, because then you lean on them, you could scratch them back up. So knock out all the horizontal surfaces first. Now, a couple weeks ago, Yancey, I think...
I keep on thinking you're ready to polish and they keep switching the camera, so I'm sorry.
Should always clean your wool pad. Now, I wrote an article, it's up on the Dr. Beasley's blog on how to clean a wool pad, and in there I say don't use a screwdriver. So now watch me do what I say not to do. So Yancey asked me, why am I using a screwdriver?
Because your stuff's coming from Chicago.
Because all my spurs are in a box coming back from Chicago. So I don't got a spur. So next best thing is a screwdriver. Okay, so what you want to do is called pick up your bead using the 10 at 10 technique. Once you pick it up, lay the pad down flat, spread your product out. I always try to make this look like it's really hard. Okay, now I got it spread out. I'm going to push down. People always say, how hard are you pushing? And I go, oh, right now I'd say I'm about 15 pounds. You can hear the motor bog down. But what I want to do right now is I want to cut the paint. I want to cut it with these fibers in the abrasive technology. I'm using the Dr. Beasley's NSP 150. That's the Dr. Beasley's version of what you guys all call a compound. The difference is that it's very unique abrasive technology in that all the abrasives are perfectly sphere in shape and perfectly size. They're all the same size. And so everywhere that abrasive particle is on the surface, it's always cutting evenly. So that's kind of something different about our products than everybody else's. No black paint. So far, that's a good sign. By the way, if you're buffing on a base coat, clear coat paint job and you turn your polish over to see the color of the base coat, it's a really bad sign. So I want to make sure I got them all out before Yancey comes in here. A lot of times when I shoot the videos, I got my contacts in, so I can't see as well. But it's okay. It's not my car.
It's not your car.
Okay, so there we go. You can see using a wool pad, kind of dusty there. That one's been used a lot and it's been washed, but sometimes when you go to clean it, some of the previous dust that didn't get washed out comes flying out of there. Okay, so then inspect, and as far as I can tell, I have all my, oh, there's some right there. Let me get those out. And this is where it's nice to have good lighting in your shop, good overhead lights, good handheld lights. I want to pull these out because if I don't, I know Yancey will focus on them. And usually what I do is you see me moving this thing back and forth. So I move it, I cut, and I'm coming back and looking to see if the marks are gone. As soon as they're gone, I move on to new territory. Don't keep polishing the same place needlessly. Okay.
All right, you ready for me?
If you want to come in and capture the holograms, you can. Yeah, go
or
for
do you
it.
want me to just do the afterwards? Just do the final, then we'll come in.
Okay, so then after cutting with a wool pad, and always remember, anytime you're cutting with wool, you got two things working for you. You got the fibers. Each one of these zillions of fibers are cutting, and you have the abrasive technology. So you have two things cutting. And that's why a fiber pad is more aggressive than a foam pad, because a foam pad has a uniform surface texture. It doesn't have all those individual fibers, so it is never going to be as aggressive. But that's why you use a foam pad to come back and pull out your holograms. Okay, so this is the beast. Let's switch over to 95 here. With this stuff, you really only need, you know, pea-size or dime-size drops. But when I'm starting with a fresh, dry pad, I like to put 4 drops on there. Okay, I'm gonna warm it up a little bit. Watch this. I always try to remember to show that technique, and I always forget, so I got it today. I'll explain what it is in a second. And just a little light pressure. Finish out. And the reason I like to reduce my pressure to make a few more passes is just because, as I always like to tell people, polishing paint is an art form. It's not a grinding process. We bring the human elements of care and passion to the process, and that's where the beauty comes from.
Oh, that was pretty flowery.
It's my thing, man.
Oh, look at that.
I don't have that cool name like Jason Kilmer, the Sandman. God, he got that one. Most people, I think they call me the Professor, but I don't know if that's, wow, that came out amazing.
Yeah, go ahead and back away.
Wow. Okay.
There you go. Look at that.
That's what the police said last night.
I know,
away.
wait, you can come back. You don't have to go
Okay.
that far.
And of course, then after that, if this was true show car detailing, I would actually probably do a third polishing step with the super soft foam finishing pad, like this Lake Country black foam. Every foam company has their own color code. And I would drop down to NSP 45 and then put the ceramic coating on this car. And that's probably what the class will do. It just depends on the paint hardness, you know. What I just saw here is this foam polishing pad finished out just beautiful. So you wouldn't have to go any further. It just depends what you're trying to do. Some customers want everything you can give them. Some people, their budget says no, two buffing processes is more than enough. Anyway, that's how you take and remove orange peel by wet sanding by hand using the Harbor Freight system. And this is the first time I've ever used this, so, you know, people always say, how long does the paper last, you know, for sanding? How many panels can you get out of a sheet? So I haven't used it enough to be able to give you that answer, but moving forward, as I sand down more cars, I will definitely be trying this paper out, and I can give you some feedback at that point. And it will be interesting next week to go over their new machine sanding system with a foam back disc, kind of like the 3M Trizac on the foam, because it's kind of thin, but it has the mesh interface or top here, kind of like Mirka Abralon. Now, their sanding disc, this is 1500, and I tell you, that feels like a piece of fine paper. I don't feel nothing there at all. So this will be interesting to test out on the other side of the hood next week. And that's all I got, Yancey.
That's all you got?
That's a cool car, and you know, and I'm sure you picked this up, but you know, that finish is freaking amazing. We could go a little bit further and flatten it out even more. The flatter you get the paint, the more you increase what's called DOI. So DOI stands for distinction of image. So always think of it like this: a mirror is 100% DOI, and before we started buffing on or sanding on this paint has orange peel, so it has a very low DO. It might be like the 40. It might be very low because it doesn't have a perfect reflection when you look into it. So the goal of sanding and to create a show car finish is you're sanding that paint flat, then restoring the gloss and clarity. So when you look at it, it has a mirror finish.
Okay, you done right now?
I'm done.
All right, let's go. Hi, once again, Yancey here. I will be the voice from the nether, so that way you guys know. I'm going to get over to you guys' comments. I'm going to throw it back over to Mike. Hang right there, Mike, so that way you're not moving all around.
Okay.
All right, coming up, we have optical clarity detailing. Mike and Yancey doing their magic. Appreciate all the hard work putting on these Wednesday shows. You're very welcome. We do it for you guys.
Thank you.
All right, we have first from Puerto Rico. Hello, Mike and Yancey.
Okay.
Then we have Thad coming in here. Hello, Mike and Yancey. First from Iowa. Hey, starting a trend.
Wow.
Then we see he was on here. He knew that you were talking about him. Greetings, friends. Director of Success.
Oh, Chris. Hey, Chris.
Yep. Where's my invite, Chris, for the pizza?
Oh,
Right,
pizza was killer, dude.
Yeah, you know they FedEx in one day. You know that, right?
Yeah, they do. I got their business card. They ship worldwide.
That's crazy. All right, my guy Kirby. Afternoon, Chris. Is the NSPGL back in stock now? And I do believe that he came back in. Yes, I just got confirmation today. GL is back in stock. Okay. All right, we have Rick Smith coming in. A lot of hellos at the beginning.
Hey, Rick.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Rick was in one of my past classes where we had a 1966 Chevy Impala SS, custom paint, tons of orange peel. Rick got to sand it down, buff it out, put a ceramic coating on it. That was an awesome class.
Your AC always comes on at the most inopportune time. All right, here we go. We got Shine Your Light Detailing. Happy Mustang Day, everyone.
Oh.
Is it Mustang Day?
I didn't know that. Maybe it means the horses.
Maybe. Okay, we have Shine Your Light Detailing coming in. I just finished ceramic coating my 2010 black Mustang GT, and that is now for sale. Hey, yep, your resale value on that.
Hey, put a link down below.
Yeah, put a link down below. Okay, this is one. David coming in here. Please explain what orange peel looks like on a dark colored car.
It looks like this.
Yeah, it looks like this. Let me just come over here before I grab the camera. Then we can show you.
The dust off.
Oh, we can go right here.
I wanted to get the dust off there.
Yeah.
The dust bunnies.
Okay.
Yeah, this has some pretty massive orange peel. Good question. But basically, it looks like the peel of an orange. So if you look at an orange peel, it has little divots. So it has, people always describe it as having hills and valleys, so high points and low points, and that's kind of what it's like. And then, of course, the goal is you want to sand down all the top portions till they're equal with the bottom portions. That's called leveling, and you flatten out that surface. And then if you're really doing pro work, you know, you probably want to take it just a little bit further, but keep in mind.
Sorry if my head was in there. I was trying to.
But keep in mind, if you're
Hold
going to
on. Let me do this real fast. All right, orange peel.
Do you mean to put something down to focus on?
Orange peel. Watch the light. Oh, my finger.
You want my finger?
There we go. All right, you see how the light has like little wobbles in it? That is orange peel. And what it should be like, hopefully I didn't lose my feed, my little HDMI connectors.
Oh, let me give that a quick wipe. Hold on.
And you see how the lights
Become refined, very
Refined.
distinct.
That's the difference. All right.
Yeah, so in this area that I sanded, when I look at the overhead LED lights, I can actually see very distinctively the different rows of LED lights themselves. Where I haven't sanded, it's just a big white blob. So that's the difference between orange peel and no orange peel.
All right, sorry if my head was like floating in that frame for a little while. I was trying to grab cameras without going through too much stuff.
To me, it's actually really hard to see it on white paint.
Yeah, because white kind of blows everything out.
Well, and it's just harder for people if you're training to use it. So like in my life, I've had a lot of people that have offered me white cars for my classes, and I usually turn them
Everybody
down.
has a white car.
Yeah, it's just not a good, it's too hard for the student. You need the students to be focusing on, you know, what they're doing in the moment. So sanding, cutting, buffing, and polishing, not struggling to see if there's still orange peel or if they can move on. You don't want people struggling in a class.
Okay, we're coming back in with another one from Shine Your Light. Question, how many days do you want to wait after a car has been repainted before you start wet sanding?
Oh, that is a great question. And you know, one of the things I've always done all my life is when I learn something from somebody else, instead of presenting it like I know it, I like to give credit. But I did some work with Wayne Carini up at his F40.com shop and with his painter Marius. And I asked him the same question because they do a lot of really expensive restorations and complete paint jobs. And he used the word that I always like to use. But what you want to do is you want to wait for the paint to shift. Okay, so wherever you live, I mean, unless you're like in Alaska and it's sub-zero, but as the paint, as the air warms up, panels expand. As it cools down, they shrink. And paint is a flexible membrane. It is going to harden up, but it's going to move around a little bit. So what you really want to do is a good rule of thumb is anywhere from 1 month to 3 months. So 30 to 90 days, let that paint shift. Now, that's in a pro shop or if you're doing this yourself. In collision industry, so if you wreck your Honda and you take it down to Bob's Auto Body and they fix it, they're going to paint it, and if they're going to do any sanding like matching orange peel to the factory orange peel, they're going to do it within a day or two and then kick that thing out the door. They're not going to let that car sit there for 3 months to give you that ultimate sanding experience or results because they're a production shop. So, you know, there's two different ways to look at that. If you're in a production shop doing it yourself or if you're a pro shop, but usually 1 to 3 months.
All right, here, this is actually a little off topic, but it's a great question. We're going to see if we can stump you today. Random question from the Dapper Clapper. My dog's saliva has created almost hard water spots on my interior door card. I've used all the way up to the all-purpose cleaner. Any ideas how to get this off safely?
Not really. I'm not really known as Mike Phillips, the famous interior detailer. I'm more of a paint polisher. Ask Joe Fernandez. But I don't know. You know, that's a tough one.
Maybe if the surfaces is painted, then you could probably use a light polish.
Yeah, if it's a painted panel, but if it's leather, vinyl, or some kind of plastic.
Well, you're saying hard water spots. So I'm
hard water spots.
That it's what do you call it? On a painted surface.
On a painted surface.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know, if you looked in the industry, there's actually a term for water spots. It's called Type 1, Type 2, Type 3, and Type 4 water spots. I coined those in my how-to books so we could all have a way to talk about water spots. So because there's different kinds, and but once you get something that's more than a Type 1, so Type 1 is when water lands in your car, the water evaporates, and it leaves dissolved minerals behind. They're just on the surface; they'll wipe or wash off. The next one is Type 2 and Type 3. So Type 1 is an imprint ring. That sounds like what you probably have. And Type 3 is a crater etching, where you actually hole in the paint. Not all the way through, but it's like a little crater. And Type 4 is where you have single stage paint and it stains white because it gets water into it, which is kind of a weird phenomena. But you know, the rule of thumb is always use the least aggressive process to get the job done. So if it's on a painted surface, you can try any of the water spot removers. Dr. Beasley's has a great one, but a lot of times if there's an actual etching in the paint, a water spot remover, a chemical is not going to remove it. You're going to have to abrade the surface the same way of removing swirls and scratches.
All right, really quick.
I'm not good at really quick.
Yeah, I know you're not. You're never really good at really quick. Does the Dr. Beasley's water spot remover, is it plastic safe, just in case this is on plastic?
I would say yes on that. Maybe Victor or Chris Racana can answer that. But it's safe on paint, and plastic is either polycarbonate or acrylic, so it's very similar to urethane or polyurethane. It's a hard impermeable surface.
Okay. All right.
Always, if in doubt, test in an inconspicuous area.
Exactly. All right, this is directed towards you, Robert. Mike, I have a 2019 black F-150. I'm sorry, that's an all-day job. During an oil change, the dealer scratched my truck. They got most of it out of the mark out. When I take it to the light, I see a small hologram. I wonder how that happens. How can I fix that myself?
The same way with, there's two ways. The easiest is to get a foam pad on an orbital polisher and a quality polish, or maybe a compound if it's deep. You know, we just did that live broadcast on the brand new 2024 pickup we had in here that had holograms from the dealership. And that's how we fix it. We just machine polish it. Is it possible to do by hand? Kinda. The problem when you're working by hand is you got these 4 pressure points pushing down either on a foam or a microfiber applicator pad, and you can usually remove the holograms, but you'll leave what are called just hand marring or leopard spots in the paint. So can it be done by hand? It can be, but it's best just to get a machine. You know, you can go down to, I hate to promote Harbor Freight, but you can go down to Harbor Freight any day of the week and pick this little guy up for about $60. If you get the coupon or wait for sale, even cheaper. Grab that and a foam pad and just polish that area, or polish the whole car.
Okay. Director Success, he must be answering me now. Oh, sure, rub it in, Chris, rub it in. Pequod's Pizza, #1 on dose scale.
That's it, yes.
Waiting, Chris, I'm waiting.
Oh man, that's some good
telling
pizza.
you. Okay, we got Roger. Hey, Roger. Class was amazing. He's a good guy. I talked to him just the other night.
Roger Reyes?
Yep.
Hey, Roger.
All right, here's another question coming in. Come on. Robert, it's not really, it's a statement. I've been watching Jason Kilmer, the Sandman, and yourself, Mike. It's a skill. Yeah, sanding is a skill. Everybody wants to do it.
Jason might be out here in the future. We might be doing a project together.
That'd be cool.
But back to Roger. When Roger was here, we sanded down and buffed out a 1941 Chevy street rod. And then we sanded down a boat, so he got to do 2 sanding. But Roger, gosh, this class coming up, I got 4 cars for the class to learn multiple sanding: 3M Trizac, Eagle Dry, hand sanding wet with Nikon, and then machine sanding wet with Trizac.
Okay, hold that thought. He's coming back in here again. Mike, I've been using the 3M quick disconnect on the Rotary, and the 3M pad sizes are 9-inch.
Yes.
Is that pad too big for my Flex cordless rotaries? They seem to be working great, but I don't want to damage the tool.
You know, a couple things about the Flex cordless rotary is Flex, to answer your question, yes, because Flex, when they first launched this tool, they said use a maximum pad diameter of 8 inches. And I'm familiar with those 3M pads, great system, keeps everything centered up, dual use. But keep in mind, all the Flex tools have a built-in microprocessor that turns them off before they can overheat. So, you know, at any time, if it's getting too hot because of a bigger pad and you're pushing hard, it'll shut itself off and protect the tool. That's one of the things you don't get with, like I did a review, we did a video here the other day with the Harbor Freight Rotary and the Harbor Freight forced rotation, copies of the Flex tools, but they don't have that processor to turn them off if they overheat. So a lot of little differences you get when you pay the big bucks, but a cool tool. I'm a big fan of the Flex PE14. PE150.
Okay, come on. There you go. David coming in here. Mike, I'm looking for the small rectangular XCX blocks that are yellow square cube like sanding block. Where do I find them?
You just have to look online.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of specialty sanding block manufacturers. I'm gonna be real honest, I never get that real deep. You know what I like? I wish I had one here, but they're all getting shipped here from Chicago because we just taught a class up there. But the Maguires E7200, okay, it's a flexible, it's a medium firmness, flexible sanding block, about a little bit bigger than this, about the same size as this Durablock. But it's very high quality. It's very smooth, hard surface. It's very flexible. You can use it for knocking down peel, for matching peel. But the other thing I like about it is because it's flexible, I can curve it, and I will curve it and put my paper on and get into curves that way. And I'll also take a pair of scissors or a straight knife and just cut it to fit. So if I want a little tiny block, instead of going out and buying a big block, another bunch of blocks, I just take the block I already have in my hand and make it work for me.
Yeah, it's
that's
like
how I do it.
Really dense rubber foam kind of material.
Yeah.
Okay, he comes back in here again, and you ready?
Yeah.
He might have solved our dilemma, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah, you can get creative. You know, all you really need is something usually foam that's circular and cut it to fit. So.
Okay, David's saying Mike is Batman, Yancey is Spider-Man.
Oh, no, you're Robin. You're sidekick.
No, I was the one driving the Batmobile, so.
That's true.
We'll have to think about it. Okay, we have Grant, Hot Tre, whoever's calling me, I'll call you back. Wise words from Mr. Mike. That was Grant coming in here. David's coming back here. Mike, the paint whisperer or the polishing assassin.
Yeah,
there you go. You're getting some nicknames on this one.
Good names. I don't know. I like blue collar working class dog. Woof woof.
Oh my God, you guys are getting funny now. All right, I've always been. It will always be Dr. Mike and Nurse Yancey.
Well,
but you know, nurses do most of the work. Doctors come in, take the glory. That's all I got to say.
That's right. We know how to do it.
All right. All right. Let's go on. Okay, Mark is coming in here. I noticed that you did not make your passes with the wool rotary in perpendicular passes, just front to back with the RO or the foam polishing phase. You went passes front to back, then side to side, etc. Do you normally not make 90-degree cross passes when wool cutting?
No, I normally do. The reason why is for UMR, Uniform Material Removal and Efficiency.
And also you only did a small area.
But I only did a small area. And it's either way, whatever works for you. But yeah, I would say whenever you can cross hatch, you're going to get, it's easier to do UMR so you don't got these ruts taking place going back and forth. But good catch, good eye.
Yeah, they're calling you out.
I buffed out a car here recently that was covered with DA sanding marks, and the entire car I used crosshatch. It has big panels on it.
Somebody's calling you out again. All right, James S. Hello, thought you weren't a fan of the P-size drops. What changed?
Yeah. Can you swing that camera over to show that thing?
Not really easily, no.
That thing was a mess.
But the P-size drops because, what do you call it? Dr. Beasley's actually, you don't need a lot. That's the reason.
It's concentrated, and it's not really the kind of liquid that soaks into your pad. So once you put those products on there, they tend to stay on the surface. And the general rule, and I got this from Chris Racana, is use half as much or twice as long.
Okay.
But I will tell you, just it's, you know, and I had to train myself to start using less product because most of the conventional products are different chemistry that you need to use more product. But whenever I'm starting with a dry pad, I don't like to have dry pad, whatever it is, on paint. I want some lubrication down there. But once you get that pad broken in, 3 P-size drops.
Okay. Then Chris came back in. This is going back to the dog comment. Remember, saliva is the first step of the digestive system. I've seen it destroy the top coat of a customer's leather sofa. So it's a little aesthetic, I'd have to say. I mean, but you know, you always can try. Keep working up the. Why don't, Chris, you don't want to go away. There you go. But you just got to keep working up that ladder until you find what works. All right. Where was it? There's the one that I wanted to show. We have BO Details. Hello from Greece. Thank you for another nice presentation. You're welcome.
Thanks for watching all the way from Greece.
You need to get a world map in here. We need to start putting.
We need to do a roadshow class in Greece.
Oh, hey, I'm down. You need a cameraman for that one. Okay, we have another one coming in here.
You know, I had this exact same car in Belgium. When I did a roadshow class in Belgium, we had a 1981 black Corvette in worse condition than this. But for that, we just polished it. We didn't do any sanding on it.
Okay, we have Seth Martin coming in here. Hey, fellows, Two Brothers Detailing here. Nice showcase of wet sanding. Can't wait to see the Harbor Freight system next week.
Yeah.
Which will work on any orbital polisher.
Yeah, any free spinning random orbital polish.
All right, here we go. Good. This is a good one. Jay Daily Detailer. What sandpaper do you recommend for headlight restoration?
You know, I started writing this article on that, and there's something I tried at my last 3-day class that I'd never done. I did one other time, but it made a big mistake. So the mistake is, and let me just grab. I have a. I'm sure I got it. Okay, so here is a 3-inch, this is a Lake Country 3-inch rotary backing plate. And this is sold as their flexible one, and it is flexible, but it's pretty stiff. And when you throw a sanding disc on here and try to sand something like plastic, if you tilt this one time and it's spinning, you're gonna gouge the plastic. So that's why myself and probably everybody in the world, we either hand sand headlights or we use an orbital sander. So I was sitting here thinking before this class, I knew that, I let a guy try this one time. I let him sand it with the rotor and he gouged it, and I'm the guy that had to block sand to get the scratch out of the headlight. It took me about 45 minutes. And so I started thinking, what if a person were to, I'm gonna walk off camera, Yancey, and I will try to get this up on the internet, but what if a person were to take, and this is what I did in the last class, I put 3 interface pads together. And these are just some simple pads I got off Amazon for our sanding classes. And then I put this on the rotary. Then I put my Mirka sanding disc. So this is what happens. If you come down and you're not completely flat, instead of gouging the plastic, the foam compresses. Ah. And it was incredibly fast.
You're so smart.
Oh, we started out with 500 grit Abralon and sanded down this 2000 Honda CR-V headlights like it was butter. And of course, then we worked our way up to 1,000 and 2,000 and buffed out, and they came out flawless. But the thing is now you're talking about speed. I mean, once you take and throw something like this on a rotary, instead of messing around trying to maintain sanding disc rotation on a free spinning tool, you put this on there. Heck, I'll even walk over here and grab the Merca sanding disc. I have these for my classes.
Now you walked. I wasn't ready.
I'm always walking off camera here. So.
See, I'm following you now. Feel like you're being followed?
And there's other versions of these types of things up on Amazon from all around the world. But here's a 500 sanding disc. You put this thing on here and turn this. Oops, turn this thing on. That's backwards. Boom. That's a sand machine right there. That's how I do it. That's how I teach in our classes.
Okay, moving on. Grant, coming back in. We done a Scuff and Buff video yet? No.
No.
Great idea.
It is a great idea. By the way, for the 3-day class coming up, I like to teach a lot of different techniques so the students can go home and pick the ones that best fit their car, their customer, you know, their process. And the 1941 Graham Hollywood street rod, which is an incredibly, I've never worked on it in my entire life, but the owner's given us permission to sand it, and I'm going to show Scuff and Buff. That's a style I think I invented years ago, but that's where you just lightly sand it and then buff it out. It still keeps everything cool. You remove more defects, you got higher glosses, all the upsides without all the risk, and we'll be using the Trizac system for that. Okay. Scuff and Buff.
David coming in here. How would you recommend sanding on curved panels safely?
Well, take your time first of all, but for curb panels, that's where, you know, it just depends. Like, I haven't really worked a lot in body shops, so I've never really got to the point where I'm using acrylic blocks, because in order to really use the acrylic blocks, you really need to have that communication with the painter, know how much paint they're putting on, because usually these guys are starting out with 600 and 800 grit, and you're going to take a lot of material off. But at some point, after you knock down that peel with the hard blocks, you want to come back with something flexible. So write this down, the letter E-7200. That's the Maguires E-7200 hand sanding pad. And there's a guy, again, from on Amazon, 5 for I think 25 bucks. So it's hard for if you need to do something hard, but it's also flexible, so it conforms to the curve of a fender, either convex or concave.
Okay, I think you just answered that along with that. He came back in here. Is there a huge difference between hard and soft blocks?
Yeah, huge difference. Huge difference. You know,
one's forgiving, the other is not.
Yeah, one's a little forgiving, one's not. Hard block, you know, the whole thing about using hard blocks, and this is a real science, but you just got to know how much paint you got on the car. You know, you need a lot of paint. In a body shop situation, the guys that are doing sanding and buffing can walk right over to Frank, the painter, and say, how much clear did you put on? Or they know Frank always puts 4 heavy coats on because we're going to sand it. You know, and there's a big difference in how thick of a layer of paint they're putting on. You know, years ago, me and Kevin Brown and Jason Rose and Mike Pennington, we did a sanding project. It was a 1949 Ford Woody for a surf band out in Southern California. And I always preach and practice this. If I'm going to sand down a car, I want to talk to the painter. So I already talked to the painter. He told me to put 3 coats of base, 3 coats of clear. He says, Mike, you got plenty of room to sand as long as you don't go nuts. Well, back when me and Kevin Brown and Jason Rose and Mike Pennington were sanding this surfer street rod down, I got the painter's phone number and I called him up and I says, hey, how many coats of clear did you put on this rig? And he said 2. And I go, oh my gosh, there's not enough paint on here for us. And he goes, but my coats are thick and heavy. You got all the room you need. And we sanded that whole thing down, buffed out, came out perfect. Nobody ended up, it was a teal. I got a picture on my wall in there. It was a teal colored paint, and there's, you know, that's what you're looking for. You don't want to see any of the base coat on your wool pad or your foam pad. So
yeah, color's bad. You don't want to see that.
Yeah, I don't want to see base coat on a pad. It's bad.
All right, that was all the questions and comments and everything. Very active bunch in there.
Yeah. Always a lot of interest in sanding, but the most important thing to do is just keep in mind, sand them, whenever you hear the term wet sanding or dry sanding or machine sanding, it is in the context of working on custom paint, not factory paint.
Exactly. And most times that people want is they get a brand new C8 vet.
Yeah. They want the orange peel taken out.
The orange peel taken out.
There's nothing there to work with. You know, I have a very good friend in this industry who, back in, I think it was 2006, he was asked to remove the orange peel on a brand new Mustang when the new body styles came out. And this guy is as good as anybody on earth. This guy is so good at sanding and buffing. And he went through the clear coat on the passenger side rear fender and had to have that rear fender repainted. So here's my point. If he couldn't do it, most of us shouldn't be trying.
Yeah.
It's just too thin, you know?
Whisper there.
Whisper there.
All right. Thank you all for tuning in. I had a pleasure reading your guys' comments. That was amazing. And yeah, Chris, that might have been a slight hint. I'll just let you take it as you will. Caveman pizza. That sounds amazing. But anywho, next week, Mike will be teaching you how to do everything that we just did.
Via machine.
Via machine. So cut down some time. Actually, better results because it's more uniform.
Yeah.
I'd rather do everything by machine. And what else do you got going on? You got a class coming up,
We're
right?
going to test out this Hercules sanding system.
Hercules.
I have a class coming up May 3rd, 4th, and 5th. This is our 3-day class. The first day is multiple types of paint correction, because I teach you things you should have in your menu if you're doing this for money. So multiple step, single step, one-step paint correction. This also covers engine detailing, machine scrubbing tires, glass polishing. It's not just, it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And then the second day is sanding. So we, for this, I got 4 cars. I mean, this class is going to be busy. We're sanding the first car Friday morning. So the first thing in my class on Friday morning, the class is going to machine sand that 41 gram Hollywood straight rod. So you know, other classes you probably started out going through a PowerPoint. My class you started out sanding down some other dude's street rod. But then Saturday we got the Silverado, we've got the Model A, and we have the what's the other car?
I don't know.
Oh, this Corvette.
This one.
This Corvette. And then the third day I've got a 24-foot Robalo center console. It's kind of a beautiful aquamarine blue. It's got lots of oxidation, lots of dock rash, and we're going to machine wet sand with gear-driven orbitals. Then we're going to machine dry sand with gear-driven orbitals. Then we're going to start wool pad rotary buffing. So all 3 days you're using rotary, you're using orbitals, and you're sanding all 3 days. But that's coming up May 3rd, 4th, and 5th. We start at 7:30 in the morning, go to about 5:30. There's no breaks, only a short lunch. Very hands-on class.
They are. You definitely get your work and you get your money's worth. That is for sure.
Yeah, and then I have a 1-day class coming up for guys that don't want to do the sanding, don't want to do the boat detailing. It's all paint correction, and that's Saturday, June 8th. And in fact, I just posted pictures of 2 of the cars for that class. So that's one of the things that I think differentiates our class from all the rest is we show you the things you're going to train on way before you ever sign up or pay for it. And for this June 8th class, I got a 1952 Hudson Hollywood street rod it's black with the chameleon flame job, totally swirled out, and a 1978 Camaro Z28 black base coat clear coat. So it's been repainted because they didn't start putting clear coats on until 1980 in domestic cars. It's a 78, so it's been repainted, and it looks like someone used it as a hockey puck. It is so bad. And I'll probably get 3 or 4 more cars for that Saturday class. It just depends how many people are going to be in it.
Awesome. All right. Well, that was a lot.
Yeah, and you can get all the information at drbeezy's.com.
I was about ready to say, where can they go to digest everything you just spit
well,
out in
if
like
you
2
want to
minutes?
see pictures of the cars, I always post them to my own forum, and that's themikephillipsforum.com, and they're at the very top right
Then
now.
always look at all their socials. If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe. And that will do it for today. I hope you all learned something. And if you didn't learn anything at all, just remember, be gentle with paint. It doesn't like being rough. Right, Mike?
Yeah, no, paint is very scratch sensitive. It's delicate. Take care of it. Most important thing I tell people is always inspect your microfiber towels, your wash mitts, and your drying towels. Once they get contaminated, you start putting scratches in.
All right. Where do you say, Mike?
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining in.
Bye.